Okay, so I'm going to start by telling you could probably do this lesson today before I give you any notes, okay? But I am going to teach you the proper way to solve these problems. By doing that, I'm probably going to confuse you, okay? The reason I'm teaching you the proper way is because, one, it's the proper way. Two, I know that when you get to squares and cubes in 7th and 8th grade, they'll be confusing for you because it'll be the first time you're hearing it. So I'm going to introduce it now so that when you hear it again in 7th and 8th grade, it won't be brand new. Okay? So I'm going to start, and this isn't on your notes page. I'm going to start with this problem. I want you guys to just look up here. A cube has a volume of 216 cubic feet. What is the length of one side? Okay, that's what kind of problem you're going to be working today. And again, we're going to do this one before I teach you anything. So you could if I gave you today's worksheet and said, here's your homework, do it, I'm taking a grade on it. Most of you guys would do fine, but you would probably use guess and check to solve it, okay? So I'm taking out the guess and check part of it. I'm teaching you the math behind it. So if that is my problem, first, what shape are we talking about? Brady? A cube. What do we know about cubes? Peyton? Okay, all the sides have the same area because what are all of the sides? They're squares. What do we know about squares, Alex? Okay, the area of a square is side times side. Bryce?
That every single side is the exact same.
Square, yes.
So square, nothing is different.
Okay, yep. So who thinks they would know what I would have to do to figure out the side length of a cube that has a volume of 216? Bianca, what do you think I would need to do?
You need to divide it by 6.
Okay, why divide by 6?
Because of the sides on a cube.
For volume, does the number of sides matter? Okay, so let's change our thought process. What is a cube similar to that we've been finding volume of? A rectangular prism. What is the formula for volume of a rectangular prism? Peyton? Okay, length times width times height. That's for a rectangular prism. I'm going to put RP. Who thinks they know what the formula for volume of a cube is? We haven't talked about it. Volume of a cube. Owen?
Maybe 1 times.
Chase?
S times S times H.
S times S times S, because the length, width, and height of a cube are all the same because they're made up of squares that are all the same size. Okay? So now, how could we figure out if the volume is 216, what a side length is? Can I just take 216 divided by 3? Brady?
216 divided by 6.
Okay, let's try that. Addie, open your calculator. You take 216 divided by 3. Brady, you do 216 divided by 6. Then we're going to write the answers over here. We're just trying to figure out what can we do to get that answer. Addie, what did you get?
I haven't gotten mine yet.
Okay. Brady, what did you get?
36.
36.
I got
72. Okay, so we're saying that each of these S's could be 36 or 72. So Brady, now plug that in here. So do 36 times 36 times 36. Addie, you do 72 times 72 times 72. Brady, did you get 216?
I got 46,656.
46,636 or whatever. So that tells me that the number 36 is way too high. So Addie, was yours even higher?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so we guessed, we checked, we were wrong. So let's look at this formula because you guys know a lot about that formula. What has to be true about those numbers? Peyton? They're all the same numbers. So I'm trying to figure out what number times itself 3 times equals 216. Let's just guess and check. Our first guess was 36. It was way high. Who has another guess? Right now, the only method you know is guess and check. Dayton, guess a number. 4?
4 would be too high though.
Okay, so hold on. What's 4 times 4? 16 times 4 is 64. So is it too high or is it too low? It's too low. So if we plug in 4s, we get 64. Noelle? Okay, 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. Too high or too low?
Too low.
We're trying to get to 216, so it's too low. Alex? 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. So that would mean that 6 would be the side length. That's the only side length that would work to make that true. Okay? So that method works. It's called guess and check. You guess, you check it, and then adjust your answer. So if what I say today is, if when you walk out of here you are completely confused, use that method. Okay? Guess and check. Some of you, today's method, you'll get it really quickly. Some of you, you might get it. It just might take you a little bit longer to get there. Some of you, when you leave here, you're going to think I was speaking Spanish to you all hour. Okay? And it's because at this stage, I'm just supposed to teach you guess and check. But if I'm going to teach it to you, I'm going to teach it to you correctly. So that when Ms. Cooper reteaches it to you next year, you've already heard it once. Because it is a confusing skill. The math behind it isn't super challenging, but it's confusing. Okay? So that way will work on your homework tonight. Okay? Now, look at your notes page. The notes page is on perfect squares and perfect cubes. Make a list of the first 12 perfect squares. You should be able to do this mentally. So, any idea what perfect squares are? Owen?
Maybe squares here have like a perfect cube.
No, good guess. Chase?
4 sides, all of the corners are right angles, and all of the lines are the same.
Okay, so a cube. Okay, so he's saying a cube. And this comes from cubes. You're right. But a perfect square, I'm actually going to work backwards. Okay, I'm going to work backwards. Does anybody know, and you don't have to draw this on your paper, does anybody know what that means? Does anybody know what that means? That's actually a question. That's a math question. Noelle?
It looks like similar to the divided
It looks like what?
It looks like what you do when you divide.
Okay, it does look like a division box. I agree, it is not. What is on there that's not like a division box?
It has a little like end. Like,
Yeah, it has kind of like that little check mark on the side. Colton?
it's called square root.
It is called a square root. Where did you find that, Colton?
Right above you.
Right above it. Okay? So it's called a square root, which again sounds confusing. But a square root is the opposite of squaring something. What does it mean to square something? Bryce?
Maybe. Is it like unit squared or something like that?
No. The opposite of squaring something. Brady, if I say 8 squared, what is that telling you to do? Chase?
Multiply 8 times 8.
Multiply 8 times 8. If I say square 8, or take 8 squared, you're supposed to do 8 times 8. This is the opposite of that. It's like division. That's why the sign looks like a division sign. But if squaring it is multiplying a number by itself, this one is saying, what is the square root of 16? What do you think that's asking? And again, you guys don't have any background knowledge on this. That's why I'm trying to develop a little bit of background knowledge. Bianca?
Divide by half.
It's
Divide by 2.
Okay, if I divide it by 2, I get 8. Is 8 squared 16?
No, it's 64. It's
Brady?
it would be divided. It'd be multiplied the two same numbers by themselves to get that.
Yeah, and it's like division, but it's not, because you can't just straight divide to get the answer. Brady said you have to figure out what number times itself, because if we square something, we take a number times itself to get the answer. This is saying what number times itself equals 16. What number times itself equals 16, Dayton? 4. Okay, so the square root of 16 is 4. What is the square root? And that's a question. When you see that, it says, what is the square root of 100? Alex? 10. Why? Because 10 times 10 is 100. Okay? So, square root is just the opposite of squaring something. So if I square a number and then square root that answer, I would always come back to where I started. Okay? So in a nutshell, that's a perfect square. A perfect cube. So sorry, these numbers under here are the perfect squares and perfect cubes. Sorry, perfect squares. Those are all perfect squares. So what do you think a perfect cube is, Dayton? It's okay to be wrong sometimes. We're all wrong, so no one in here has any idea. Bianca?
Is it like the equal and then that number?
No. Good guess. Chase?
Is it the 100 times 6?
No.
Is it like something times something times something?
A number times itself 3 times.
Knew it.
Because it's cubed. Good job. Okay? So before we go any further, we're going to come up with the first 12 perfect squares. And again, you can do this mentally. You just don't even know, you didn't know what they were before, so you never knew they had a special name. What is the first number you say when you count?
1.
What is 1 squared?
1.
1. So the first perfect square is 1. What goes in the next one, Alex? Why? 2 times 2 is 4. So the second perfect square is 4. Next one, Brady.
No.
We got this by taking 1 times 1, 2 times 2,
Oh,
9, because it's 3 times 3.
9.
Dayton? 16. Colton, what's going to come next?
32.
So 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4.
5 times 5, 25.
So 25 is a perfect square. Maddox?
36.
36. Brady?
49.
49. And you guys, mine got shifted a little bit, so I have one extra one down below. Colton? 64. Noel? Okay, 81. Dayton? 100. Now, up to here, you guys are probably good, and this one, you're probably good. This one, the 11s, are the ones we forget sometimes. Nev? That's 12 times 11. That's what the last class said too. 121. That's the one that sometimes if you're trying to figure this out, you might have to go out to the side and work out 11 times 11 if you don't know that one. Out of all of those facts, they're like our doubles, okay? 121 is the one that people typically mess up on. And this is going to get higher than what you need to know. That means if I take the square root of any of these, I'm going to write this, you don't have to. These are all perfect squares, which means if I would be asked those questions, the square root of 1 is 1 because 1 times 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2 because 2 times 2 is 4. That would be the square root of 9. But they're called perfect squares because I got whole number answers. Okay? The square root of 18. I can figure out the square root of 18 in 7th grade, I believe. You will have to estimate the square root of 18. It is an irrational number. Who can tell me what an irrational number is? Maddox?
Number that doesn't stop.
Yeah, it's a number that goes on forever without a pattern. Okay, so like pi. Pi is an irrational number. If you take the square root of a number that's not a perfect square, you will always get a long, ugly number that goes on forever without a pattern. But we use our perfect squares to give an estimate. I'm trying to figure out what number times itself equals 18. You know it's an ugly number because it's not on our list of perfect squares. It's not one of our double facts. Looking right here, what would 18 fall between? Peyton? It would fall right in here. Do you agree? So the answer would be between 4 and 5. So it would be a decimal that starts with 4 point, and then it'd be a long, ugly decimal that goes on forever without a pattern. So it'd be greater than 4, but less than 5. Okay? So every number has a square root. They're just not all pretty square roots. So the ones that have whole number square roots, we call them perfect squares. Let's make a list of our perfect cubes. We made that top list by taking 1 times 1. How do you think we get the first number in our perfect cube list? Owen? Times it by itself 3 times. So what's 1 times 1 times 1? 1. The next one, 2 times 2 times 2. Maddox? 8. Raise your hand if you thought 6. Anybody? Common wrong answer is 6. Next one, 3 times 3 times 3. Noel? 27. Good job. 4 times 4 times 4. Mallory? 64. Now, the next two, sometimes you have to do some algorithm. For the next one, you can think money. What's 5 times 5?
25.
25. And if you have 5 quarters, how much do you have? 125. Now, 6 times 6 times 6. 6 times 6 is 36. If you can't memorize this one, which again, today is day 1, so you're not going to have it memorized. But out to the side, you could do 36 times 6, and you would get 216.
Oh, yeah.
When I taught 8th grade, they had to memorize the first 15 perfect squares, which again, most of them have them memorized up to 12 when they came to me. And they had to memorize the first 8 perfect cubes. Because even in 8th grade, those were the ones that showed up most often. Now I'm going to show you how to apply that. If you're still with me, I might lose you here. And again, that first problem we did on the whiteboard before I pulled up the notes page is like your homework. Okay, so you can guess and check on your homework tonight. Why am I showing you the rest of it? Bryce?
Because you said if you're going to teach, if you're going to show us, you might as well just teach what we're
Yeah, I might as well show it correctly, okay? Because guess and check is a strategy that always works, always. But I'm going to show you the math behind it and give you a little background on solving equations. Okay, and it's in this unit because we're still talking about geometry. So, every problem we're going to start with a formula. Every problem we're going to start with a formula. So, example 1 says, if a square has an area of 100 square inches, what is its side length? So, we're talking about a square and we're talking about area. What is my formula for area of a square, Alex?
A equals S times S.
Okay, but give it to me the proper way.
A equals S squared.
Good job. A equals S squared. Now, is that an equation or is that an expression, and why? Who can tell me if it's an equation or an expression and why? Brady?
It's an equation because it's taking the side length times the side length.
No. I agree with it as an equation. I disagree with your reasoning. Who remembers what is the difference between an equation and an expression?
I don't. Expressions don't always work.
No? Peyton? One of them has an equal sign. An equation has an equal sign. An expression does not. Now, here is something new. Eyes up here, very important. We get to this solving equations towards the end of 6th grade, simple equations. I disagree with the way where they put this in the book. I agree with it because it is volume, it is geometry, that's why it's in this unit, but we don't know how to solve basic equations and they throw some pretty complex equations at us. So here's what the basics of solving any equation. When you have a variable equation, it means one of the things in your equation is a letter, okay? When we substitute in what we know, this 100 is the area, so I'm going to put it in place of my A. Until you get to systems of equations at the end of 8th grade, you will only know how to solve equations with one variable. Okay, this only has one variable, but what's with that variable?
2 zeros.
An exponent, okay? When you are solving equations, you will know you are finished because you will get an answer like x equals 2, or y equals 7, or 4 equals 1/2. Okay, you have to have a variable by itself on one side and just a number on the other side. That will be your trigger that, hey, I'm done. That'll be what makes the bells go off in your head that says, I'm finished with this problem. We will talk a lot about inverse operations. Anybody in here have seen anything that says inverse operations? Where? Up there. Okay, up by my order of operations sign. That poster is actually going to be moved up here to cover up my hole from my TV. I just haven't done it yet. Look up there. It says inverse operations are operations that undo each other. So I'm going to step back. I don't want you to write this. That's an equation that most of you can solve mentally. I don't want you to write it down. I'm just showing you what that inverse operation means. What you need to learn about equations is the equal sign is kind of like the center of a balance. That's my poor drawing of a balance, like a science balance. Okay, what do you know about a balance?
That if you have something heavier and something that's a little less heavier, the heavier item is going to push
Yeah,
it down.
so if you have a heavier item, it'll pull that balance down. If you put a heavier item on one side and you wanted to balance it back out, what would you need to do? Chase?
Put another heavier item that has the same weight as it, or you can put some like small items.
Yeah, you would have to put essentially the same amount of stuff on the other side to balance it back out. Okay, you guys know enough about balances that makes sense. What you didn't know is that this equation is saying whatever's on this side has to be equal to that side. That's a balance. So if I do something to one side of the equation, I have to do it to both sides to keep it equal, to keep it in balance. And again, who can tell me what is the answer to this question before I show you any math? It's 6. Okay, you know enough about math to know that that's 6. You don't have to write this, Colton. I'm showing you what inverse operations are. Okay, we use inverse operations to solve equations, from simple ones like this up to multi-step equations that you'll do in 8th grade. Okay, we start these ones this year. I don't let you solve that mentally because I have to teach you the process of solving equations to get to the hard ones. Inverse operations is how we solve them. We look at the side with the variable. This side of the equation. I'm covering up the 10. I have to get rid of anything that's not a variable. So what's there that I have to get rid of? Owen? The 4. Is that a positive 4 or a negative 4? Positive 4. If I want it to cancel out, to go away, how do I get rid of a 4? Or a positive 4? If you look up there, it says add or has a plus sign. What's on the other side? Subtract. I can subtract 4 to get rid of it. But if I take 4 away from this side, what would it do to my balance? Would it still be the same? So what would I have to do to keep it in balance, Bianca? I would have to subtract 4 from the other side. Now when I clean this up, I have x equals 6. We already knew the answer was 6. I'm showing you the math behind it. Okay? What you do to one side, you have to do to both sides because the equal sign is like the center of the balance. Okay? Now I have to up that to square roots and cube roots. Oops, too far. That's okay. Over here, we had v equals side squared and 100 equals side squared. To solve an equation, we need to get that s all by itself. I can't have s squared. So what's with the s that I need to get rid of? The exponent. Look at our sign up there. If it says something is squared, what is the opposite or what is the inverse? Square root, which looks really ugly. But I have to square root both sides. Why do I have to do it to both sides? Why do I have to do it to both sides? Noel? Nope, because it's an equation, and what you do to one side, you have to do to both sides to keep it in balance. Now, what is the square root of 100? What times itself equals 100? 10. So easy, it's hard. What times itself equals s squared? Because on this side, 10 times 10 equals 100. So 10 times itself equals 100. What times itself equals s squared? Brady? Addie? S. Do you guys agree that s times s equals s squared?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you square root s squared, it's always just going to be s. Now, do we have a variable equal to a number?
Yes.
So that means we are done. I just need a label. What is the label for a side length if the volume is square inches? It's a side length. What? Just inches. Yeah, just inches. And again, I'm teaching you the proper way. Does guess and check work?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, if you were to guess and check this one, you're still going to start with the formula. V equals side squared. But you could write, oops, I messed up there. Sorry, when I rewrote it, I wrote V because I know where we're going. A equals side times side. And then you just have to think, what number times itself equals 100? That would be 10 times 10, but your answer's not 10 times 10. What is your answer?
10.
Just 10. The side length would have to be 10. Okay, so that way works. I'm just teaching you the proper way. Let's go to number 2, the middle one. A cube has a side length of 4. What is the volume of the cube? Who thinks they know my formula for volume of a cube? Volume of a cube. Mallory? V equals s cubed. Rewrite formula. Substitute in what we know. What do we know, Dayton? Yeah, so I'm going to write V equals 4, and that cube doesn't go away. If you memorize your perfect cubes, you'll get better at these. What's 4 times 4 times 4, Alex? 64. What's my unit? Centimeters. Cubed because it's a volume. Okay, the ones where it's just straightforward, those are easier. Ones where you got to work backwards make us think a little more. How would we do the next problem? We're not going to do it because of time. If a square has a side length of 14.2, what is its area? Maddox, what would I need to do?
14.2 times 14.2.
So first, A equals side squared. So A would equal 14.2 times 14.2. Is 14.2 a perfect square? No, so that's one you'd probably just have to multiply out. 142 times 142, 2 decimal places in the problem, 2 decimal places in the answer. Look at the next one. Again, we're not solving that one because of time. A cube has a side length of 1/4 meters. What is the volume of the cube? Lexi, what's my formula for volume of a cube? V equals side length cubed. What can I substitute in? 1/4 in place of the V or the S? In place of the S, so V equals 1/4, and I'm going to put it in parentheses, cubed. What does that mean? Bryce?
We have to take care of the 1/4 first.
Nope. Good. He said it. You have to take care of the 1/4 first. Why did he say that? Okay, and it's do this first, but if there's just 1/4 in parentheses, is there anything to do? No. So that's really just to show that cubed goes to all of the 1/4. If I wrote it like this, if I wrote it like this, that means that it's 1 cubed over 4, which would have a different answer. So anytime I'm cubing something, what does that tell me to do? Up there, 4 cubed. What did that tell me to do? Multiply that number by itself 3 times. What is my number that I need to multiply by itself? 1/4. So my next step, and I can't move up without erasing. I mean, that's not what I want to do. It's okay. I'll just squeeze it down here. V equals 1/4 times 1/4 times 1/4. That's cubing 1/4. Now we just do 1 times 1 times 1 is?
1.
4 times 4 times 4?
64.
64. So my answer is 1/64 meters cubed. We're going to do these last 2. They're the fun ones. Does everybody have that before I go on? Raise your hand if you're at least kind of with me. You're kind of following me. Raise your hand if you just like the guess and check method better. Okay, and that's fine. Okay, we're going to do these 2. A cube has a volume of 216 cubic feet. What is the side length of one of its faces? We're going to start with the formula. Alex, what's my formula? V equals S cubed. This is essentially the exact same problem that we started with, that we solved before I taught you any of this. But I'm going to teach you the math behind it. Rewrite the formula, substitute what we know. What do we know, Brady? That the volume is 216. And I just know that that is equal to the side length cubed. So if I was using guess and check, I would have to figure out what number times itself 3 times equals 216. If I'm solving an equation, I have to use inverse operations to get the s all by itself. What is with the s that cannot be there if I am done with my equation? Bryce?
The cube.
The cube, the little 3. Look up at my inverse operation sign. What is the inverse or opposite of something that is cubed? Chase? Cube root, which is a brand new vocabulary word, just like square root. Does anybody think they know what it means? Noel? Dayton?
One number times itself 3 times.
Yeah, you're figuring out what number times itself 3 times equals the number under the little cube root symbol. Now, the cube root symbol looks like a square root symbol. It's just there's a little 3 out there. Why am I doing it to both sides? Brady? To balance it out, because in an equation, what you do to one side, you have to do to both sides. So, Dayton said, really, if I see this problem, that is asking what number times itself 3 times equals 216. What is it? 6. And again, you can use your notes at the top of this paper to help you with those numbers. If you see 216, just count over how far we went. So I know my answer is 6. First, this question says, what is the cube root of s cubed? Anybody think they know? The cube root of s cubed. What times itself 3 times equals s cubed? It's just s. So easy, it's hard. Label. Nope. Just feet. If you're looking for a side link, it's just the unit. So it's just feet. One more. A square has an area of 64 square inches. I'm going to underline square and area. I need my formula for area of a square. Maddox?
A equals s cubed.
area is squared.
S squared, yeah.
Okay? Substitute what we know. Peyton, what do we know? Oh, we're on this one. So 64 is my. So guess and check. I'm trying to figure out what number times itself equals 64. What's my answer have to be? What
Something times something.
What number times itself equals 64? 8, okay? But my work, that equation is not solved because it has that exponent of 2. How do I get rid of something squared? What is the opposite of squaring something? Square rooting. But if I square root the left side, I have to square root the right side. What is the square root of 64? 8. What is the square root of side squared? S. Label? Inches. Now, I'm going to keep doing it the proper way because the more you see it, the more likely you are to remember what it means. If tonight on your homework, I want you to have your notes next to you, okay? They will be beneficial. I'm most worried about you being able to get to the right answer. So if guess and check is the best way is the only way you can get to your answer, then guess and check. Okay, but I'm going to keep going over this till hopefully someday it sticks. On your worksheet, it looks very similar to this. Hold on, let me pause this. Okay, guys, on the top of the worksheet, I'm just going to do them on the whiteboard. On the top of the worksheet, the first one says area of a square. Who can give me the formula for area of a square? Yours says A equals what, Noelle? Chase? Side squared. So in the box that says area of a square, you will write in side squared. Triangle is on there. I don't think you'll need it, but what does it, area of a triangle, Brady? Base times height divided by 2. Volume of a cube. Noelle? Nev? Side cubed. Good job. Last one. Volume of a rectangular prism. This is old news. Mallory? Length times width times height. Notice, everyone, the first thing it asks for is the formula. After that, there's workspace. I want you to try all 11 of these. Some of them's new, some of them's old. Okay? If you can't remember the math, like square root both sides, what can you always use? Guess and check. Okay? Okay, I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day.